What is going on, everybody, and happy 2019. Hope you all had a safe and enjoyable New Year's. Paul here, as usual, coming at you with the first Crypto Coffee update of the year. So join me for a simultaneous sip as we kick off another 365-day lap around the sun. Turn it up. Good coffee. Okay, so until January 15th, there's really not too crazy much going on in the crypto space in terms of events. There's a kind of trickle of news, but this is really the time of year where folk are getting together and preparing for another productive year. So with that said, my initial idea was to get into some geopolitics, but that's not really the meat of the matter here at the Crypto Coffee update. So rather than doing that, I went ahead and opened up a tweet from Peter Zehan. He is a geopolitical strategist and global affairs expert as per his Twitter bio, and he has a just fantastic 24-page breakdown of what may happen in 2019. Dude is very inceptuous, articulate, and intelligent, and I think it's definitely worth a read if you're into that sort of thing and want to see what potential happenings on the global stage may manifest in this year, 2019. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get back more into the crypto side of things. A Bitcoin bear market will likely continue. This is coming from Willy Woo. Now, he's a pretty big name in the space. He does a lot of long-term analysis, not really from the day-to-day or even the month-to-month, but a lot of the stuff is year to year. So Willy Woo is doing a lot of hard work and doing a great job trying to get some predictive capability for technical analysis out of this, what is currently an uncorrelated asset known as Bitcoin. So really good work he has going on there, and this is just what he sees. Due to low on-chain volume, due to low on-chain volume, the chance of a large move upward is relatively low. Lots of L's there. So with that said, this is Willy Woo's longer-term perspective. Now, a shorter-term perspective is from Origami Oracle, buddy of mine over in Cryptide. He does fantastic technical analysis. Man has a great head on his shoulders. So if you're into price movements, Origami Oracle has you hooked up over in the Cryptide Discord. So check it out. Link below in the description. Excuse me, he's saying he sees an inverse head and shoulders occurring with the blue bar that will blow up here, moving upward in the short term over the next week and a half or so. Now, this is just a potential option, and this is what Origami Oracle sees. Let me know below in the comments or over on the Discord what you think. Is this something that could potentially manifest? Is this something that maybe is off base? I mean, Origami knows his stuff. He's a smart guy, but after all, this is just one man's opinion, as is Willy Woo's. Who knows what can happen? Nobody has a crystal ball, so you have your opinion too. That's what this space is all about. Probably my favorite part is getting to know people, sharing perspective, and sharing opinion. So, speaking of sharing things, Ethereum developer Consensus is partnering with AMD. So these are two huge names that are now sharing some business space, getting some work done to help to bolster the blockchain industry. This is just something I briefly wanted to touch on. After all, it's even mentioned in the article here, Consensus laid off 50 to 60% of its staff, which is a huge amount. This is something that Consensus painted with a relatively rosy disposition, saying that they were willing to shift from a burgeoning kind of blockchain incubation system in which many different teams from all different walks of life were building various projects in the ecosystem, threaded together by this one Ethereum company, Consensus. Now they are shifting to phase 2, as they called it, where they will be focusing more on the depth of adoption for blockchain and the usability of these decentralized applications on the Ethereum network. And partnering with a name like AMD, that's something that could be fast-tracked relatively quickly. They have a lot of technological prowess behind them. However, only time will tell. Now, something else that only time will tell about is Swift and Ripple and their tenuous relationship. Previously, Ripple seemed to want to work with Swift, Swift being the global transaction finality system for global central banks all around the world. And with their aging technology, Ripple thought it may be relatively easy to partner, perhaps work with Swift, and help them to overhaul their systems. Now it seems that because of cryptocurrency's popularity, the 2017 bull run perhaps being no small part of that, and Ripple's very new approach to how interbank transaction finality is undertaken, it seems that both entities are okay with parting ways. Now, Swift says no to a partnership, so does Ripple, since now Brad Garlinghouse is saying that Swift is going to be replaced in its entirety by Ripple. This is something that I find fascinating, since Swift goes all the way back to the 1960s, as does some of their code. So that says a lot. What this essentially means is you have these new systems built on top of these old, decaying building blocks that, while it may not cause the entire system to come collapsing downward, nonetheless, it requires new reinforcing, like concrete pillars to help shore up what otherwise would be a dilapidated overpass. So this is something that is becoming increasingly costly and increasingly difficult, and something that Ripple sees as a prime opportunity to jump in and help global central banks reduce issues with liquidity, transaction finality, and global payments. So really cool stuff there. Excited to see what goes on. Again, this is kind of the only time will tell section. Just want to keep you abreast to what's going on in the world. And a follow-up, I told you as well, we keep you up to date on the stories we cover here at Cryptide. We do what we can. Overstock, they are indeed taking advantage of the Ohio opportunity to pay taxes in Bitcoin. That's super cool. Now, Overstock, they are one of the first retail companies to accept Bitcoin back in 2014, citing extremely low profit margins, already being depressed further by the fees that are charged by traditional institutions like MasterCard, Visa, etc. So they saw an opportunity, jumped on Bitcoin, and now they seem to be one of the first major companies taking advantage of the Ohio law that lets you pay your taxes in it. So this is a real thing that's happening, not something that's just a novel publicity stunt on the part of the state of Ohio. So that's really cool to see. Now, this is kind of the meat of the matter story, kind of a multi-article tale that I want to regale to you, and something I find very interesting about the crypto space. The crypto space is very manic in a way. They bounce back and forth between opinions and ideas seemingly depending on social consensus. So it's very interesting to see how social consensus also impacts on-chain consensus. And Binance is a huge player in consensus in general, not the Ethereum company, actual consensus. So they are launching an ICO platform, and it's ready for takeoff in 2019. You can see here that Tron's BitTorrent is going to be launching their token in the Binance ecosystem, as is Fetch.ai. So you already have two ICOs lined up to launch on Binance. Binance had a fantastic 2017 and no doubt a great 2018, as their BNB token is one of the few cryptographic assets to not have huge depression in terms of price. In fact, I believe they actually ended the year up from where they started in 2018, which is something that is not easy to do for a larger market cap coin. The BNB token allows you to pay your transaction fees on the Binance platform in BNB token at a discount rather than paying it in Bitcoin. So obviously this is something that's very attractive to people who trade on the platform regularly. This is also something that helped to reinforce Binance's meteoric rise in late 2017 and throughout 2018 as well. Now, this is something that could be very beneficial for projects in the ecosystem. After all, Binance is assumingly heavily regulatory compliant, going through with KYC and AML, know your customer, and anti-money laundering, and that's something that's protected a lot of investors by using these traditional state-backed methods of identity verification. It's cut down on fraud and has had an empirical effect on the ecosystem. Now, with that said, this is a very beneficial way for companies that want to launch an ICO to avoid some of the stigma surrounding the otherwise unscrupulous activity before you had these incubation ecosystems. Before, you would have to just say either fork a project or write your own code, create your own ecosystem, and just put it out there, either on a Bitcoin talk thread or through Twitter. You would just have to say, hey, I'm doing this project, here's what it is, and send us some capital, we'll send you X amount of tokens. As you could probably imagine, there were some very many honest projects who did the best they could, and even some projects that, after not hitting a certain cap, voluntarily issued refunds at the behest of nobody. They just simply did it to be honest, and that's really cool. But of course, with every good thing comes some bad, and there were a lot of scammers and fraudulent activity in the space as well. So this could be fantastic for companies that are looking to avoid some of these potential legal headaches. Now, it's not all roses. As said, there are pros and there are cons to everything, and Binance isn't necessarily the most trustworthy entity in the ecosystem. Not to say that they're not doing the best they can, and they're pretty trustworthy, but at the end of the day, they're a business, and they have their own self-interests. So Binance is charging, according to Expanse and Chris Franco, just exorbitant fees for listing. Now, according to Chris Franco, again, just the take of one man, an individual who has definitely, it's empirically provable he's gone through the process. What's not empirically provable is what was said behind closed doors, etc. According to Chris, what occurs is Binance attempts to get you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, meaning you cannot discuss the terms and conditions of what's going on behind the scenes, and then will charge exorbitant fees to have your token listed, at which point, if the team says no, they're under an NDA. If they say anything to their community, they're in turn slapped with legally enforceable fees, which could be a huge detriment to any budding project that needs all the funding they can get in the early stages. And essentially, if they say nothing, that leaves the blame to be laid at the feet of the devs. And because Binance can essentially say what they want, being the individuals who started the NDA, that in turn leaves them at a more advantageous position, I suppose you can say. So this is something that really blew up last year. You can see over in August. So it just goes to show Binance isn't always the shining star of integrity that they're sometimes made out to be. Not to mention, this whole regulatory compliant ecosystem is something that already exists, and it's kind of gone both ways. You have regulatory compliant ecosystems for ICO incubation, and you also have systems which allow you to incubate your ICO in a way that is I don't want to say not regulatory compliant, but doesn't involve regulation at all and is fully decentralized. Komodo has the DICO, or Decentralized ICO, DECO, decentralized application in their ecosystem, which allows you to launch an ICO with basically no know your customer, no anti-money laundering. You could just do your thing, and you can get a little bit of help with every step of the way. Now, they're not going to build the entire thing for you, so it's a bit more hands-on in that regard, but for any project that is more maybe anarchist leaning, or just maybe in a region where this kind of thing is completely banned, like Venezuela, this could be a beneficial tool for them that's been available long before the Binance ICO incubation. Now, the more regulated component that I'm talking about is from a token, actually not token, it's a crypto known as Ardor. The Ardor platform is extremely advanced. I'm blown away by it every time I take a look at it. It is the successor of NXT. NXT allowed you to issue assets on their platform. Now, I got to give credit where credit is due. 2012. Yeah, that's right. We're going back, 7 years now. BitShares. So 7 years ago now, BitShares launched a platform, or Dan Lammer launched a platform known as BitShares, on which you can issue assets. So there's your kind of predecessor of the ICO incubation frameworks. Now you have Ardor, which is a successor of NXT. So NXT came after BitShares, and then Ardor came after NXT, and they are sleek, regulatory compliant. They have fiat gateways, and now you have Max Property Group that they created a subsidiary called Dominium. Max Property Group has hundreds of millions of euros worth of real estate property all across the European continent. I think it's 5 or 6 countries they're in, and they are launching on the Ardor platform. They find it the most user-friendly, the most convenient, and the most regulatory compliant. So you can see here a major $100 million market cap company launching on a relatively unknown platform. At least Ardor is relatively unknown compared to competitors such as Tron, Stellar Lumens, of course Bitcoin, etc. So with that said, this is just to drive home the point that yes, indeed, there are existing ICO incubation tools that aren't attached to a exchange that is a third party that has a history with some potentially sketchy NDAs and things like that. And partnering with an exchange like that does kind of run contrary to a degree to the proof of keys movement. 10th anniversary of Bitcoin, January 3rd of this year. The proof of keys event was just to get your keys off of third-party exchanges. Essentially, if you're not using this crypto to actively trade, if it's not part of your trading portfolio, keeping your cryptocurrency on a software wallet, on a secure device, on a secure network, or perhaps most securely on a hardware wallet that is purchased from a verified seller, the actual company itself. There are some stories going around about faulty hardware wallets, but that's normally purchased from a third-party seller, which again, just like a third-party seller can open you up to another vector of potentially compromised keys. Same thing with any cryptocurrency exchange, not just to pick on Binance here, but even, let's say BitHum or Kraken or anybody, you're trusting them with your private keys, meaning if you don't own the keys, you don't de facto own the crypto. If the exchange goes down for maintenance, or, forbid if there's a hack, then there's really nothing you can do about that. And so this is why the proof of keys movement is, as I see it, pretty important and fits nicely into our kind of story that we talked about with Binance and some of the other ICO incubation platforms. To wrap things up, some interesting stuff coming out of Kraken, talking about exchanges here and some regulatory compliance issues. Here's the compliance team's 2018 transparency report, again coming out of Kraken. Very interesting metrics here, and you could see it is just almost logarithmically increasing from 39, 71, 160, all the way up to 475 inquiries. So that's a huge amount. You can see the U.S. is the major disproportionate entity here, for better or worse. Now, the United States does have some of the best managed exchanges in terms of real volume. There's huge issues in the space right now with fake liquidity and wash trading. That is something that we're going to be focusing on heavily this year. So keep an eye out on Cryptide, just exploding in the space. We're going to be really doing some great work here, and I'm excited about it. But it's data like this that really gives you a huge insight into what's going on. US is about 20% of the user base, and you can see here they make up probably about 65, maybe 60 to 70% of the chart roughly, in terms of total inquiries. So yeah, and kind of ending on a humorous note, no requests from the CIA or NSA, or are they just helping themselves? When you already have all the data, do you really need to make a request? You know, you just kind of use the data you've already collected. So Edward Snowden, cheers to you. So with that said, I think we're going to end it here, guys. Thanks so much for watching. As usual, it is a pleasure. Here's to an exciting and productive 2019. My name is Paul, signing off. We are Cryptide, and remember, the tide is rising.